welcome to Standard Deviant School Spanish. I'm Tessa Monroe.
And I'm Kenyatta Rogers. Today's topic, using verbs in the present indicative tense. Now, that sounds complicated, but don't worry about it. It's really not. We'll show you everything you need to know to become an expert in conjugation.
And you'll enjoy yourself, too. You won't even realize you've learned something until it's too late.
Here's the lineup, my friends. Get this. All Spanish verbs end in either AR, ER, or IR. We'll go through each one of these, first teaching you the vocabulary that you need to know, then how to conjugate the verbs. Finally, we'll give you some practice examples. Here we go.
As in English, verbs in Spanish are used to describe an action, except Spanish speakers call them verbos instead of verbs.
Verbos. That's masculine and plural.
That's correct. Thank you. Anyway, to use verbs in Spanish, you have to learn how to conjugate them.
Spanish verbs are organized into three categories: those that end in AR, those that end in ER, and those that end in IR. Each verb has different verb endings. You choose which ending you need to match the verb subject. For example, if your subject is nosotros, or we, then you need to use the verb ending that matches nosotros.
Hang on. We'll go into all the details in just a minute. The verb endings are a little different for each of the three categories of verbs, AR, ER, and IR. We'll show you how to conjugate regular verbs in each of the categories.
Regular verbs are those which you can conjugate by following a predictable pattern. Once you learn the patterns, you can conjugate any regular Spanish verb, even if you don't know what the verb means. We'll begin with verbs that end AR.
Here's your next dose of vocabulary. And here's a spoonful of sugar to help it go down.
The Spanish word for shower is ducha.
Here's another kind of shower. The word lluvia means rain. Trabajo means work, like the place you work or what you do for a living.
Todo means all or everything.
The phrase a través de means through, as in get it through your head.
And pared means wall.
Ah. Walls are very hard.
Tren means train.
A lectura is a reading or a lecture.
Okay, let's get started. Don't get too wound up about this whole verb thing. Regular, predictable verbs are easy to deal with.
Let's start with these two obvious points about AR verbs in the present tense. AR verbs are verbs that end in the letters AR, and present tense verbs indicate action that's going on right now.
Do you hear that? Action that's going on right now.
To learn Spanish verbs, you just have to learn what each verb means, which is just a matter of memorizing vocabulary. And you have to memorize the verb endings and know when to use them. Verb endings match in person and number with the subject, letting you know who's doing the action. Each subject pronoun, I, you, he, we, they, and the others, has a verb ending that corresponds with it.
Here are the endings that go with AR verbs: o, as, a, amos, and an. When you use these endings, drop the AR off the end of the verb and add the appropriate ending that matches your subject. Hang in there. You'll understand better as we conjugate a few verbs.
Here's the first one. Let's conjugate the verb cantar, which means to sing.
The highlighted letters are the verb endings. When you add a verb ending, drop the AR at the end of the verb, but keep the stem of the verb. In the case of cantar, C-A-N-T is the stem, and AR is the ending that gets dropped.
The verb ending that goes along with yo is o. I sing is yo canto. The ending that goes with tu is as. You sing is tú cantas.
Usted, the formal version of the pronoun you, works like a third-person singular pronoun using the verb ending a. In this case, you sing would be usted canta. The third-person singular he sings or she sings is él canta or ella canta. The pronoun nosotros and its feminine counterpart nosotras uses the ending amos. We sing is nosotros cantamos or nosotras cantamos.
Ustedes, the plural you, uses the ending an. Ustedes cantan means you all sing. And finally, the third person plural pronoun, ellos and ellas, use the an ending as well. They sing is ellos cantan or ellas cantan.
We're using the pronouns to show you the verb conjugations because it's easy and convenient. Keep in mind that the pronouns stand for nouns of a particular number and often a particular gender. Saying George and Henry sing is the same as saying they sing. So you'd use the same verb form you'd use with ellos. You'd say George and Henry cantan. Now, let's practice with the verb cantar in a few sentences.
I sing in the shower.
Yo canto en la ducha.
They sing in the rain. Ellos cantan en la lluvia.
You sing in class?
¿Usted canta en la clase?
So let's go over the conjugation of cantar one more time.
Yo canto. Tú cantas. Usted, él o ella canta. Nosotros o nosotras cantamos. Ustedes, ellos o ellas cantan. The endings are o, as, a, amos, and an.
Cool. Now let's go over another AR verb, escuchar, which means to hear or to listen to. Here's the conjugation of escuchar.
Yo escucho. Tú escuchas. Usted, él o ella escucha. Nosotros o nosotras escuchamos. Ustedes, ellos o ellas escuchan.
Escucho el tren.
Escuchan el teléfono.
¿Usted escucha a través de la pared?
Oh, sí.
Remember, the verb form that matches the formal pronoun usted will always be the same as the third person singular verb form, the verb form that goes with él or ella.
Él escucha a través de la pared. Likewise, the verb form that matches the plural ustedes is always the same as the third person plural verb form, the one that goes with ellos or ellas. So you'd say ellos escuchan to mean they hear, and you'd say ustedes escuchan to mean you all hear. We used an AR verb as an example, but this is true for ER and IR verbs as well. You'll learn to conjugate those verbs in a moment.
One more time. Let's go over the verb endings that are used with the AR verbs.
O, as, a, amos, an.
Here's the vocabulary for this section.
An edificio is a building.
Ardillas are squirrels. And pantalones are pants.
Now let's take a look at the next category of verbs, the ones that end in ER. If you understand how to conjugate the AR verbs, these will be a piece of cake. They work almost exactly the same way. We'll show you the endings for ER verbs, then we'll give you some examples. Notice the similarities between the way the ER and the AR verbs work.
The ER verb endings are o, s, a, emos, n. Now take another look at the endings of the AR verbs. They are o, as, a, amos, an. The only difference between the two is the A and the E. Other than that, the conjugation pattern is the same for both types of verbs.
Now let's look at an ER verb. Comer means to eat. The stem of the verb is com, and ER is the part we drop when we conjugate the verb. Yo como, tú comes, usted, él o ella come, nosotros o nosotras comemos, ustedes, ellos o ellas comen. He eats buildings. Él come edificios. They eat pants. Comen pantalones.
Let's conjugate one more ER verb. The verb beber means to drink. It follows the regular conjugation pattern of an ER verb, so, just like in the previous examples, we will drop the ER at the end and add the appropriate present tense ending.
Yo bebo. Tú bebes. Usted, él o ella bebe. Nosotros o nosotras bebemos. Ustedes, ellos o ellas beben.
So once again, let's go over the endings for ER verbs.
O, es, e, emos, en. O, es, e, emos, en.
Now onto the final category, the IR verbs. Again, the endings for IR verbs are almost identical to the endings for ER verbs, but not exactly, so pay close attention. First, let's go over the new vocabulary you'll need to know for this section.
Lago means lake.
Grande means big.
And granero means barn.
Here are the endings of the IR verbs. O, es, e, imos, en. Notice that most of the endings are just like the endings of the ER verbs, with the exception of the nosotros ending, which is the only form that uses an I.
Now let's go through the conjugation of the verb vivir, which means to live.
Yo vivo, tú vives, usted, él o ella vive, nosotros o nosotras vivimos, ustedes, ellos o ellas viven.
I live in a big city.
Vivo en una ciudad grande.
We live in a lake.
Vivimos en un lago.
They live in a barn.
Viven en un granero. Meh, meh.
Here's another example of an IR verb, gruñir, which means to grumble. Remember the N with the tilde over it is pronounced like nia. Let's start with the conjugation of gruñir.
Yo gruño, tú gruñes, usted, él o ella gruñe, nosotros o nosotras gruñimos, ustedes, ellos o ellas gruñen.
Spanish is used in, well,
You grumble.
Usted gruñe.
We grumble.
Gruñimos.
I don't grumble. No gruño.
Notice that the first person singular or yo form uses the O ending for AR, ER, and IR verbs.
Review time, folks. All Spanish verbs have a stem and an ending. Verbs are divided into three groups depending on their ending. AR, ER, and IR are the three different endings. When you conjugate a verb, you drop the AR, ER, or IR and attach the appropriate ending to match your subject in both gender and number. Using cantar, to sing, as an example, you conjugate AR verbs like this. Yo canto, tú cantas, usted, él, ella canta, nosotros, nosotras cantamos, ustedes, ellos, ellas cantan. The pattern for conjugating ER verbs looks like this. Using comer, to eat, we get yo como, tú comes, usted, él, ella come, nosotros, nosotras comemos, and ustedes, ellos, ellas comen. Finally, IR verbs, using vivir, to live. Their pattern looks like this. Yo vivo, tú vives, usted, él, ella vive, nosotros, nosotras vivimos, ustedes, ellos, ellas viven.
That's all the time we have for today.
Now you know how to conjugate verbs in the present indicative tense and not get freaked out.
Not a bad deal. Thanks for watching Standard Deviant School. See you around.
Bye.